Hello, everyone. This is Belle Trevino, and this podcast series is meant to talk about the issue of people in the world with disabilities who can't or struggle with wearing masks. So without further delay, I'd like to go ahead and introduce my guest for today. If you will, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dana, mom of two boys, 18 and 16. My 16-year-old has Down syndrome. Lived in Fort Worth for, 22 years now.
All right, so maybe you can just go ahead and start with what your experience has been with the masks in general. We can go specifics after that.
So there was no masking at first, of course. They were saying you should not mask. So I guess at the very beginning I was working at Monkey Mouths, a pediatric speech therapy center, doing front desk work. And at first, everything was just be careful, and then we ended up closing, no mask involved yet, and then I was laid off because they had to shorten their staff, and so that was in April. Mask didn't become a thing, I guess, until, May, June? Until they really started pushing for that. I just have a hard time breathing in a mask, period. I mean, even laying down on a pillow when the edge of the pillow comes up a little bit in front of your face, I can tell it's there, and it bothers me. That minor little lack of airflow gets in my way. So I'm pushing it and getting on the edge of the pillow. So imagine a mask in front of your face is much more a problem than that. So I never have worn them. I just knew that it wasn't actually legal for them to ask for masks. It's not a law. It's just a request, basically, from the state. And so knowing that, I just didn't. And rarely ever have I had a problem. So I'll ignore the signs, basically, because I know that when the mask mandate first came out, the state was asking businesses to enforce it. And then they changed the mandate a bit, and when they realized that really wasn't the way they should have done it, that shouldn't fall on businesses to enforce laws. And so now that that's not the case, I think the communication from the government hasn't been great to the businesses to say, hey, you guys don't have to do this anymore. So businesses still think they have to have these signs all over their businesses. And so I know that a lot of people feel like I do about it, or kind of indifferent about it, or feel that people should be able to make their own choices about it. And so I assume the best about a business when I walk into it. I ignore the signs and assume that they just think they have to have that, and they're not enforcing. Walk in like pre-coronavirus. Most of the time, nobody says anything to me about it at all. I just go in and out, do my thing. It's not an issue. Once in a while, they will say, do you have a mask? And I'll just say, oh, thanks, but I have a medical issue with masks, and kind of keep walking. I don't stop to have a conversation with that person. I kind of in passing say this because I'm not looking for a confrontation. I just want to do my business and go on. And most of the time when that conversation happens, that's it. They're happy to let me go and accept that medical issue, as it were, and that's it. A handful of times since I started declining masks, they have said, I'm sorry, we can't accept medical exemptions. And in that case, I have to decide, do I want to put a mask on for a little bit, or do I want to make a statement about the fact that they're discriminating against people with medical issues with masks, and leave and take my business elsewhere? And rarely do I do that. I usually will just put one on for a little bit and wear it down, even below my mouth sometimes. It truly is just about compliance and not about anybody's safety at this point. I've also been watching the data since all this came out, and that's the most important thing, is seeing what the facts are and making sure that what we are doing in our mandates, what we're doing for each other, out of love, of course, is lining up with the facts and not virtue signaling, not just doing things that make us feel like we're helping other people, or that other people are helping us, but is this legitimate? Especially if we're going to halt the economy like we have, and have people stop working. Really look at the whole big picture, make sure we're doing the right thing. And in doing that, I've seen there's no basis for this at all. The death rate compared to 2018, 2019, and 2020 is just spot on where it should be. I don't think there's any rise at all in overall case count as far as how many people have died. There's so much. It's a huge rabbit trail. So I'm not buying the fear that the media is selling about this. And so just looking at what's going on with it, I'm just making a decision case by case and deciding I'm not wearing this, and if I have to wear it, if someone is having a conversation with me about it and asking me to, we just take it from there.
So can you give me like a couple of just like stories and stuff? I've heard a couple things in general, just from my mom and whatever, about in your Facebook, of course, about a couple stories. Just what are a couple things that have kind of happened to you and that include the masks and people being irritated about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, the North Richland Hills Rec Center is one example, I suppose. They are very strict on masks. That's a place where I have to wear one if I'm going to go in. They do accept CJ's medical exemption, which is great. Props to them for that. He has an exemption from his pediatrician, who is fantastic. Just based on Down syndrome alone, has agreed he should not be forced to wear a mask. But if we go up to the indoor track, and I kind of jog along with him, I'm required to keep my mask on, even though I am running. Even though they're stationary bikes where people are running in the same manner, they don't require them there in that context. But if I'm running up on the track, I guess because I'm passing people and I could theoretically be blowing my coronavirus all over them, that's their requirement. And they are just Nazis about it. They will watch you and get your eye contact, and it's really, really silly. And so we have maintained our membership there, but finding other ways kind of to exercise where we can, because it's gotten kind of out of control. We were at a Palaio's Pizza once, and they would not accept a medical exemption. They were like, "What's that? Do you have that in writing?" Well, I didn't have it with me, so no. But they said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't serve you I can't take your order unless you have a mask on." And so I said, "Okay." Well, I pulled my t-shirt up over my nose, and he just begrudgingly took my order then, while the rest of my family went and sat down at a booth. Just silly. It's just really over the top silly. Some of the businesses, I think, now are really tightening up on it. Just yesterday I was at Costco, where I have had zero problems so far. I will just they guard the door, of course, not guard the door, but they have someone standing there offering masks to people who don't have them, and they have to date been willing to accept my medical issue and go on in and not an issue. But started yesterday, they aren't accepting medical exemptions anymore. They will offer face masks or regular masks or face shields, but they won't allow anyone over 2 to walk around the store with nothing on their face. 2 years old. So I didn't notice the signs because I don't pay attention to signs. But as I gave the person guarding the door my typical, "Oh, thank you, I have my medical exemption," they informed me of this new policy. So I was like, okay. So I took the mask and just kept it below my mouth, at least below my nose, the entire time, and no one said anything to me. I even saw some staff around doing the same thing, at least below their nose, because I can't blame them one bit. So once I left, I saw the manager that was manning the outside of the store, having these conversations with people about the new policy. I thought, I want to talk to him a little bit about this, just because I think these conversations need to start happening. So I went over to him and I said, "Can I ask you a question? So your policy is anyone over the age of 2 has to have a face mask or face shield on. Can you tell me why that is when the state mandate even is 10 and older?" And he said, "Well, this is just the corporate mandate. Every business can make their own policy about it, and this is the way we've decided to keep people safe." I said, "Okay." And that's fair and legal, every business can make their own policy about it and enforce it as they see fit. But I said, so what is that based on? So if the state's goal is presumably the same, their stated goal is to keep people safe. And if they say the way they do that is to mask people over 10 years old, then what are you basing your 2 years old on? So if we're going to have these mandates and these restrictions, then we should be able to bring logic and science to the table in our explanations of those mandates and restrictions. Because people are going to disagree, but if long as we can back our mandates up with these logical conversations, then people are going to be a lot more likely to comply versus this is just our policy. Okay. If you can't explain to me why it's 2 instead of 10, or even that you have a mask mandate at all, then we're going to have an issue. We're going to have people questioning this and fighting back and pushing back, as we should be. And he was fantastic. I had no problem with this guy at all. We had a very good, we probably talked for 15 minutes from everything from politics to masking to common sense and science. And we left on very good terms. But it's that sort of conversation that I think needs to happen more and more from people who are questioning, not people making a scene and throwing things and ending up on YouTube. That is never my goal at all. I am a Christian representing Christ, and I want to represent truth and honor other people who have different opinions than me. But at the same time, truth is what's important. And so we do need to have these conversations and not just comply. And unfortunately, that's what most people, Christians and otherwise, are doing. It's just, there's a sign on the door. I have to put a mask on my face. And there's a psychological component to masking our faces, too. And that really, really bothers me to see all these faces covered. It's just, there's more to it than just our health. Much, much more to it. At this point, I don't think that has anything to do with it at all.
Yeah. And what do you know, what have you been watching and stuff to figure out the science and stuff behind why it's negative?
Well, anything that MSM is not reporting, basically, there's Facebook groups, there's all sorts of information available online. It's where you can find studies that haven't been done. There is no study available that shows masking the general population is a good idea. The only studies we have are done in a controlled environment, in a clinical environment, and even in that environment, masking is not effective means of preventing viral transmission. Even the backs of the boxes of masks say explicitly, this is not for the prevention of coronavirus. This is not, this is basically virtue signaling is what it says on the box. And no uncertain terms. So if people would just start thinking outside the box, thinking outside of MSN media, and start looking for actual truth, looking for facts, more people would start questioning this and pushing back against it.
So how do you think that this whole ordeal, the masks and everything, has kind of changed things for people that have disabilities and disorders and can't do masks?
I'm sure that on a myriad of levels, psychologically is huge. Many people are being forced to wear them, even though physically and psychologically they shouldn't. I've heard just the other day about a 2-year-old, or maybe it was a 4-year-old, that got kicked out of a preschool because she wouldn't wear a mask. I mean, little kids here. And how is that affecting them? Kids can't understand these things on a level that adults can at all, even if they were completely scientifically based. It's just sad. Plus, physically, we are rebreathing air the airflow is not natural, of course, and that is affecting people. There's a higher rate ILIs than, I can't remember what that even stands for, but upper respiratory infections, basically. There's a higher rate. People are showing up in the ER with MRSA infections, all sorts of increased rates of things like that, directly caused from having our faces covered all day and breathing air that we're not meant to breathe, decreased oxygen levels, increased CO levels, it's not a good thing. So, and then people with disabilities are increased susceptibility, those sorts of things. So it should be automatic that anyone with a disability or anyone that feels like they shouldn't have one on their face, like I feel like I can't breathe with one on it. I don't have any documented medical issue, heart disease or anything like that. But at the same time, I have a physical response to it. I feel like I'm suffocating in it. I genuinely do. So who is anyone to say I should have one on my face? Like that's got to be negatively influencing my health to have one on my face. And I can't imagine having it all 8 hours a day, having it on my face. No way. I feel like I would have passed out day one.
Yeah. Well, and kind of like what you were saying, like schools, are always teaching, don't do, peer pressure and all this stuff for, the negative, drugs and alcohol and, do abstinence, they're like, don't follow peer pressure. And yet, wouldn't you say they're kind of doing the opposite right now?
Absolutely. Don't follow your gut. Don't follow the science. Just listen to us. We know what's best. This is for protect others. Oh, really? If you ask any questions about how this is protecting others, show me the science. Show me the data that shows me that this is protecting others. And oh no, don't question. There's no conversation to be had. You just follow. So, and there's other studies out that have shown that when they look at masking different cities that have very lax mandates on masks versus mandates that are very strong and very enforced, and some of these more liberal cities, they have the same outbreaks. There's no difference whether it's mandated and enforced or not. And so if these masks really were working, we should see a decrease in these more liberal cities where they're following the rules a little bit better. And honestly, they're following them everywhere. When I go to Walmart or Target, which I've never worn a mask in a Walmart or Target to date, and I rarely see anyone else in there without a mask. Anyone. And that they're in a mass busy Walmart or Target, there's many people in there with asthma and legitimate reasons not to have one on, yet they are anyway. So what sort of damage are they doing to their bodies? Well, that information is not getting out. There's not enough education on the proper wearing of them, on are you a legitimate exception to a mask? Should you be wearing one or not? And if you do have an exemption that's very legitimate, you're being made to feel like you're a leper, like you should just stay home, like there's no exception for you. Really, you have to just stay home and order your stuff online. You can't come out and infect everyone else as if everyone is just infected. Just this assumption that a healthy person with asymptomatic person is going to have any sort of high chance of infecting anyone and being a risk to anyone is just asinine, really. I know personally a buddy of CJ's whose husband had symptomatic coronavirus. And he's fine, but he did have symptoms, tested positive. And of course, she lives with her husband, and she did not get it, tested negative. So if you can be that close to it and not get it, then why are we so afraid of each other? Not afraid here.
And now I know this will probably be a question that other people maybe have asked you before, but what about for the people who are more susceptible to it and, like the ones that are told that are, the really elderly or the ones that already have, issues that would make them more likely to really struggle with the illness and possibly die from it? How do they come into play?
How do we address that? Well, I feel like from the beginning, a smarter move would have been to protect those people, to put all these tax dollars that we've put into paying the entire population to stay home, use half of that, a quarter of that, to fund protecting the elderly and the truly at risk, versus just paying everyone. Let those people get it. Let us develop herd immunity with the people who aren't at risk, instead of drumming up all this fear. Now everyone thinks they're at risk. I have people in my life that haven't been out since March, that feel like because they have a underlying chronic illness of some sort, say a thyroid condition or perhaps even asthma, that they are so at risk that they have to stay home and just completely not go anywhere, not go to Walmart, not anything, because they're so at risk. Well, the facts don't line up with that line of thought. The people that are truly at risk are if you have an age, if you're over 70 and you have a comorbidity, you have a heart disease, you have diabetes is a big one, but all these other things. I have any other health problem at all, and I'm young. That does not necessarily predispose me to having a serious reaction to getting coronavirus, because if we did, we would see, because we have lots of asthmatic children in the U.S., many in the 20 to 40 range that are asthmatics. Well, if that in and of itself was a serious comorbidity for coronavirus, then we would be seeing a lot higher death rate in those age ranges, because when you see the death rate go way down for children, almost nobody died that are children, and then it goes slightly up for older people, and then it skyrockets for over 70. They didn't pull asthmatics out of that figure. All those asthmatics, a lot of them have gotten coronavirus and recovered just fine. Not that it doesn't increase their chances a bit, but it's not so much that we need to live in absolute fear and quarantine ourselves and change our total lifestyle because a child has asthma or someone has thyroid issue. That's just not going to... It's not going to play into it. But yet the media doesn't do anything. No one is doing anything to educate people about that. They're happy that you're afraid. If you're afraid for the wrong reasons, they're okay with that. You're staying home and you're wearing your mask when you happen to be out. So there's a rabbit trail here that there's something bigger than just coronavirus at play. Because why else would they want us to be afraid? For all the wrong reasons.
So just to kind of start wrapping up a little bit, like what do you wish would happen from this point on? We've got the masks going on. We're in a time of really drastic change, and we're clearly not going to be getting over the fear anytime soon. What do you want to happen, especially for people who really cannot do these masks?
I mean, just personal responsibility, personal choice, just like America was founded on liberty. Like if I'm I don't want to be forced to wear a mask. If someone wants to ask me to wear one, then that's fine. In that situation, I can decide whether I want to comply with that or not. But as far as the government mandating anything from the federal level or even the state level, it should absolutely be an individual's choice. Then I believe that the businesses should be able to require that because they're individual businesses, and I want to be able to run my business the way I want to. But at the same time, there needs to be just a whole lot of education. Because I feel like if the truth were out, if education were happening, the mandates from businesses wouldn't be happening either. So all of these mandates are based in fear, and fear based on untruth about what's going on. But yeah, people need to be able to make their own choices about what to do. Personally, if I'm in someone's home and if we're going to go to Kevin's parents, they're older and immunocompromised, I'm perfectly willing to wear a mask if they want me to wear a mask. Social distance, whatever, when I'm in their space. But when I'm out and about, I should be able to make my personal choice. And if someone feels like for whatever reason, whether they're basing their beliefs in truth or not, they have the right to have that opinion, but they don't have the right to force that opinion on other people, same as religion or anything else. So, if you're that afraid, then stay home and take care of yourself. You do what you need to do to feel safe, and I completely respect that. But to ask everyone else to alter their lifestyles dramatically to accommodate your fears that have no scientific basis, then that's not right, and that's a slippery slope, because we see the mask mandates tightening. At like I gave the Costco example, I feel like that's just, they're conditioning us to being forced to do things. And with the vaccine coming out, eventually the vaccine will be mandated in order for us to buy and sell as well, which is a whole nother rabbit trail of kind of scary stuff. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me about all this. And so
happy to do it.
Thank you all so much for listening to Disabilities in Masks. If you have any further questions or inquiries, please comment below and I will do my best to find out what I can for you. Please share this podcast so we can reach people who may need this information. And again, thank you so much for listening.